BookTube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner, and I'm not talking about a book actually, but I am talking about something based on a book. So it is time to do my comparison video of the two film adaptations. Now this is gonna be probably a very all over the place video because I thought about planning it, but I want to get it filmed now. So, and I'm doing this before I decide to go for my run, which I need to do soon. So, I probably could do better with this, but you know what? I'm going to just go ahead and do it, get it done. And then I would love to eventually do a video where I compare the films, do a who did it better video, and which movie adaptation did it better compared with the book. But that, I don't know if that will ever happen because, that book is over 1,000 pages and I am not that talented when it comes to reading. I cannot get a book like that. So I have read it before. Okay, so, here goes. Okay, so the first thing you gotta think about is the fact that the original It film adaptation that came out in 1990 was a made-for-TV movie on ABC back in 1990, like I said. So, obviously, compared to today's way of filmmaking, and the fact that the movie came out was able to be an R-rated film and something that you don't have to, and it was not on TV, so there was no censoring, or not as much censoring. That definitely makes a difference. First of all, the original miniseries is a beautiful movie. It's a classic horror film. But I was watching it again after a few years, comparing it to the film, the movie. I kind of lean towards that one because I think that one is more interesting to me, more engaging. Like the miniseries. Okay, so first let's talk about the fact that with the I should have prepared myself for this because I'm trying to figure out what to start to talk about. Well, the film is the mini-series that, with its limitations, it can't do as much of the gory stuff that the movie did. The movie, okay, first of all, there's the bathroom scene. Pennywise scares Beverly Marsh by first, she's in her bathroom, and she's really struggling with the idea of becoming a woman, because first of all, her dad because she looks like her mom and that her mom is gone, her dad has this inappropriate desire for his daughter, which is not, that's one of the first difference. The miniseries does not have that in it. There's a little bit of that controllingness in the miniseries. The father does give her a hard time about spending time with boys, and he's like, "Oh, you've been seeing some boy, have you?" But in this one, in the movie, it takes this a step further, as he sprays her with perfume in one scene. He, tries to force himself on her, I think, in one scene. He gets very aggressive towards her. But there is this whole metaphor of her being afraid of becoming a woman, and you associate that with the menstruation cycle. So there's this really gory scene where she's in the bathroom and she hears voices in the drain of little kids and saying, "The clown brought us down here, help us, Beverly," and and then the voices in the voices start to alter a little bit in the movie, and and then this balloon pops out of the drain in the miniseries and reveals itself, and she gets sprayed with blood. But what happens in the difference in the movie is not only she gets exploded with blood. There's so much blood. The whole bathroom is covered in it. And on top of that, what they really do that's very interesting is in the movie, at one point, because her father likes to caress her beautiful red hair and touch it and everything, and in frustration, which is something that I've seen that before in Buffy season 6. She ends up having this sexual relationship with Spike, and as much as I'm Team Buffy, particularly because of season 7 and how they are, season 6 does not shine a good light on Spike, and they are having a very toxic relationship. And at one point, he comes over when she's already stressed out, like a social worker is coming and making sure how she's doing with taking care of Dawn on her own, because their mom is at this point, basically, spoiler alert, the mom's dead at this point. And, she's trying to take care of her little sister, and the social worker is going to come and check on things. And so she's already kind of frustrated and nervous about that, anxious about that. And so Spike shows up. He's like, I'm looking for my lighter, and he's all up in her face and touching her, knowing that he has this power over her. And he starts caressing her golden locks, because Buffy's blonde, and he's like, I'm going to nickname you Goldilocks and everything. And in frustration after the whole disaster with the social worker, she chops off all her hair, or not all of it, but she starts cutting it so it's a lot shorter, and then she goes to the hair salon and styles it and all that. Well, Beverly does the same thing. She cuts her hair off, so it's really short. It's kind of like a curly bob, and she chops off, and it's for the same kind of thing, because a man is caressing her and harassing her, and she is not comfortable with this. Especially since this guy is her dad. At least Spike is Buffy's, her friend with benefits, although I don't want to call them friends, but that's a whole nother thing. So it's the same kind of thing. So she cuts her hair, and then before she gets squirted with blood, what they do differently is that the hair comes out of the drain and starts grabbing her face and wrapping around her, and she's screaming, and then she gets away from the hair, but the blood sprays all over and explodes out of the drain. It's just so just gory and everything. And of course, the difference with the TV miniseries is that they cannot be too gory. Because it has to be a miniseries that at least teenagers can watch. No little kid, parents will not expose their little kids to that movie. But, a teenager has to be appropriate for them. And so, they couldn't do as much of the gory stuff. And there's a lot more, there's other bloody scenes and just so much gore, and a lot more cursing, and Henry Bowers is even worse, I think. And another thing is with Henry Bowers is that one of the things, the miniseries could do a lot more, but there were things they still left out. But they could focus more on the backstories of the members of the Losers Club and their stories in the present, in years later with their spouses. But in the movie, we barely got any of that. We got hints of that. And I do appreciate that this time they follow the book in the movie where Eddie is not living with his mom. His mom is gone, but he's married to a woman who is just like his mom. And that is what's in the book. He doesn't, in the miniseries, it's clearly his mom. He calls her mother. So I appreciate that they followed that, but the rest of that, they had to skip in the movie. They didn't include that as much. They show their present lives, but we see Beverly as a fashion designer, her job as a fashion designer. We In the miniseries, we spend more time with Bill and his wife Audra, and learn more about her. And there's the whole implication of her boss, her agent Greco, and that whole like weird relationship, and how he kind of, I think he likes her and wants her to leave her husband, but she loves Bill. And one of the things that the miniseries did one of the things that the miniseries didn't do that is in the book is that Beverly's husband, her abusive husband Tom, lures Audra to Pennywise because I think she chooses to go. She chooses to go to help Bill, even though he made her promise not to. She goes anyway. And then I think Tom shows up. He also goes. He's also there to track down Beverly. But he ends up tricking Audra. Now, I'm going by from what I've been told. I do not remember this part. I mean, I vaguely do. And I looked at when I was watching the miniseries so that I could do this video. I was wondering, the gas station attendant that Audra runs into, that Audra meets I was looking at him thinking, does he look like Tom, the actor who plays Tom? But no, I'm pretty sure it's a different actor. But I would have loved if I realized, oh my god, after all this time, like, realized, wait, it's the same actor who plays Tom, so they did include that in the miniseries. But they don't. They just, in fact, it's just Pennywise who, like, he shapeshifts into this gas station attendant, and then tricks her, reveals himself as, he's like, don't you want your balloon, Miss Denbrough? And then he reveals himself to be Pennywise, but then at that point he's able to enrapture and capture her with his dead lights in his eyes. He's like, don't you want it? Don't you want it? And he's able to hypnotize her. Which I'd be like, what do you see in those dead lights, I wonder? I'm kind of morbidly curious. But we do, according to the movie, what we end up seeing, or at least what Beverly saw, because that's one of the things that they different. One of the other differences is that Beverly is the one that gets captured in the dead lights, and she says after they defeat Pennywise and stuff, she's like, I was looking into the dead lights and I saw us as adults, what our lives are like in the future. So that, I think, is kind of like, so I don't know, maybe, okay, I don't know, maybe that's what she sees. I don't know what that means. Like, what do the dead lights, are they supposed to show you? Like, your worst fears? Do they show you a scary future or something? I don't know. I'm kind of curious. Like I said, morbidly curious. I would never want to face Pennywise or face the dead lights, but part of me would be curious. Like I said, I would be morbidly curious of what you see in those dead lights. Maybe one of you, if you read the book or whatever, maybe you can tell me what you think if the book explains it. Because, again, it has been a long time since I read the book all the way through, and I did decide to restart it from the beginning. So I'm not very far into it. Let's see. What else can we talk about? There's so much to talk about. It's just I didn't plan this video. I was like, I want to just film this video. Because I haven't, Another thing is that the film feels, the miniseries is kind of safe. It's still pretty creepy and scary. And there are those people that are like, oh, this isn't that scary, and, aren't traumatized by it. Not that I was traumatized. But it's kind of like, okay, good for you. Yeah, great. Good for you that you're not scared and the rest of us are just big chickens. It's just, I don't like that. When it comes to stuff like this, horror, it annoys me when people are like, oh, it's not that scary, or it didn't scare me, or I'm, basically, they're desensitized by horror because they've seen so many horror movies that it takes a lot to scare them, or at the end of or they are like, they don't get lost in the story, in the film or the book, because I feel my stupid, I always bring my, I have a little pouch that I put my phone in case like something happens to me on the road, when I go running, and I can feel it vibrating because I have my phone on vibrate because I don't want it to go off. I didn't want it to go off while I was at work. Not that you can really hear it. I think it's low enough that no one will really notice it, but you still gotta be careful, of course. But yeah, I can kind of feel it vibrating on my stomach. But so it's like it's so safe, like not just with the gory stuff, but with all the other stuff. Like it does not show as much with her dad. It implies things about her dad and his relationship towards her, but there's never anything. We just see him be like maybe grab her or something on the arm, or be like, "Is someone peeking at you, girl?" Being very like, "I don't want these boys looking at you." But the movie takes a step further. The movie takes it to the extreme. Like I said, the dad sprays her with perfume so she can smell like her mom. He grabs her, he holds her, tries to pin her down, but she struggles to get away, and particularly towards the climax, there's a big climax scene in the climax, or the scene right before Pennywise grabs her. Spoiler alert! Before he takes her to his lair, there's all that, and it's a big struggle. It's like a struggle, gets very violent and everything, and while the miniseries, like I said, doesn't do a lot, because it can't. It's a made-for-TV movie made in the 90s, where I think we were a little more trying to be more family-friendly and stuff, and it's made for TV. It's something that, of course, nowadays we have HBO. It's something that should be, that you can watch with your teenage kids, and not, because there are parents that are like, even teenagers, although nowadays I think teenagers, basically, it doesn't matter, they'll watch this stuff, and, you can take your kids to, my mom was reminding me that you could take your kids to see a rated R movie, as long as they're with a parent. That's, which is why I'm kind of disappointed watching it now, compared to the rated R 2017, 2019, or 18, I guess, film adaptations. And my biggest gripe is I realized that the climax between the kids and Pennywise is different. First of all, the movie, as in the one that just came out, includes the house on Neilbolt Street, which is a big thing, and that's connected to Pennywise's lair, but it's not included in the miniseries. I don't even think you ever see that house. It's not included in the story. In the miniseries, anyway. Well, they actually included that in the movie, which I really loved. And by the way, that house, if you've seen the computer animated film Monster House, the house on Neilbolt Street in the film looks exactly like that house, like a live action version of it. So if they ever want to make a live action version of Monster House, which I don't think they could. Maybe, but it's not one of those movies. It's not like a classic. Maybe when I'm old and gray, if they ever want to remake it and make it a live action, but I don't think they ever will. But they could use that house if it still existed. But they actually include that along with the leper. The leper is not included in the miniseries. The leper is actually, in fact, I think it's a wink wink to the leper, but there's a scene where part 2, when in the miniseries, when they come back as adults, and Ben, as an adult, played by John Ritter, he goes where the Barons were, and he's remembering being chased by Henry Bowers and Belch Huggins and all them, and Victor Criss, and he has this whole flashback, and what ends up happening is after and I don't know if it's after the whole thing with where he helps that kid that, that was like him, that reminds him of himself. I don't know if it was after that, but he ends up almost being, like, scared out of his mind out of his wits by a hope, this hobo, this, hitchhiker who, approaches him, taps him on the shoulder, and he jumps, and he freaks out. He's like, chill out, man. I don't even know. I wasn't trying to scare you or nothing. So I wonder if that was kind of like a hint into the leper or something, even though he's not a leper. But that's another thing that I like that they included is the leper. So the battle between the kids and Pennywise in the first part in the miniseries is a bit of a letdown. Looking at it now compared to the movie. So in the miniseries, they get down to the sewers, and they don't go through the house on Neobolt Street. That, like I said, they do not include that in the miniseries. They get there, and they're walking through the sewer, and of course Henry Bowers follows them down there and finds them and grabs. And one of the things that they do differently is he attacks Stan and grabs a hold of him. And I can't remember what happened. How did Stan get away? Oh, I remember. So Pennywise, as the Deadlight shows up, grabs Belch and kills him. Really folds him in half, basically, and sucks him through the pipe. And I think at this point, Victor Chris is already dead. Or he's already been killed. And then the Deadlights show up again, coming speeding through the pipes again, and basically whatever Henry Bowers sees, his hair turns white. And they do include the part where they mention that he took blame for all the deaths. He said that he was the one who did it. Hair turns white, and so while he's distracted, he's scared out of his mind, scared to death, basically, like to the point of his hair turning white. Stan gets away. He escapes. And so he catches up with the others. And they get down to the drain, and then the lights come running. As he's catching up to the others, the lights come speeding through, and then there's a mist and light that zooms over the kids, and they come together, and they're like, trying to hide from the light, because they, don't look in the Deadlights. And there's mist around them, and they are like, come together, hold hands, don't let the mist separate us. And Pennywise is trying to scare them by taking all these different forms, like Beverly's dad, a werewolf that scared Richie. I'm trying to think. Oh, and in the beginning it was Georgie's form, which that's a whole nother thing that I gotta talk to you guys about. And, trying to scare them. The other one tells the one that's when Pennywise is trying to manipulate, he's like, no, it's not real, it's not so-and-so, it's all a trick. And he's like, it's not, you're not real, you're not scary. And then he grabs Stan, who is the most vulnerable of the group, grabs him and pulls him to the, grabs him and everything, and, corners him, looks at him, forces him to look at the Deadlights. And we learn in part 2 of the miniseries that he's like, I wanted to be in the Deadlight. He says, I wanted to be there. The Deadlights started to pull me in. But then what ends up happening is Eddie, which they do, is he's like, because earlier, for giving themselves a boost to 100-year confidence, for some reason, they all decide to inhale Eddie's, his little aspirator, because he has asthma, which of course we learned that's all BS, but he still believes it, and it gives him courage. It makes him feel better. So they all take an inhale from the aspirator, and then I think it's Richie who says, this tastes like battery acid, which is really funny. But then he uses that against Pennywise, and of course, I think it's the whole idea of imagination and everything. So he's able to spray Pennywise. It affects his skin and makes him, and that's, they defeat him by that. They're able to wound him, and then Beverly, I think he's able to use the slingshot and sling a rock at him that, hits him in the head and causes the skin to break in half because the skin is damaged from the battery acid. And of course, we know, and of course it's the 90s, so, that kind of technology, the technology looked really crappy and bad. But then he's able there to defeat him and everything. But of course, we learn in part 2 that they didn't defeat him. He is back. He was just hibernating from his own wounds. And now I think the part the second in part 2 miniseries was a lot better than with the kids, but I'm guessing the only thing I can think of is that they're, first of all, it's a TV movie, and you're dealing with kid actors. So it's like they couldn't go too far with it. They have to be careful. And they couldn't do too much. And they didn't have the technology to do. So there are probably a lot of factors to why that ending was not that great, to me anyway. So I know that people like Terry, for instance, are not happy with the whole, the spider shows up. And a lot of people always say that Stephen King's endings are bad anyway. But I think people like Terry would rather see Tim Curry, who plays Pennywise, see his face rather than see this weird, creepy looking spider. They are very disappointed in that. But I do think the fight between the adult actors in the giant spider is a lot better than the fight between Pennywise and the kids. I mean, I know you get Tim Curry in that scene, but you know what? It was, to me, it was weak. It was not very good. Like, it was a little scarier. But of course we're dealing with kids, so maybe they did it like that on purpose because for the other reasons and the fact that there are kids fighting the monster, so it's like maybe we should do it like, maybe they're thinking we're kids, so it's like defeating the fairy tale monster like this. Although I think it was more involved in the book. From what I vaguely recall, there was more involved. And of course there was one scene that no version will ever touch. And, I'm pretty sure that Stephen King, I've heard that he was writing this when he was doing, coke and stuff. So that's probably why they have this one infamous scene that everyone is familiar with if you read the book, but you will never see on screen. I mean, even if you haven't read the book, you probably heard of the infamous, very inappropriate scene for 11-year-olds to be doing, but he includes it. They do it. But it will never be adapted for the screen because no one wants to see that, especially with such a young group of characters. It's just too much. And like I said, I'm not going to say it because you guys, I'm assuming that a lot of you probably know what that infamous scene is. I mean, you can always private message me or put it in the comments below if you want to know what I'm talking. If you by chance you don't know what I'm talking about and you want to know, then I'll tell you what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to say it on here. So that's a little bit better. They have a fight with this giant, Pennywise becomes a giant spider, and they're like, they have to, he almost captures Richie, Ben, and Bill. They are taken by the Deadlights. They are, and Eddie's the only one in the movie, which I'm guessing which obviously probably in the book too. Eddie's the only one available. He fights him and blocks him from himself from seeing the Deadlights. And he's like, I believe in Santa Claus, I believe in the Easter Bunny, but I don't believe in you. And he sprays him and he does what he did as a kid. But it's a little bit better. But I do think that's but I guess because they kind of reference the whole idea of this being like a fairy tale and Pennywise is like a fairy tale monster. And that's why they decide to do that line, to be like, oh, I believe in this, and I'm just like with fairies. You clap your hands, you believe in fairies and stuff like that. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like, I believe in this, and I believe in that, but I don't believe in you. So it's better. But basically, the movie that came out, the newest movie, does it so much better than both of those endings. At least for me. Now, you guys might not agree, but personally, I think it does it better. Because you have in the movie, first of all, when they're kids, let me remember. It has been a few weeks since I watched it last, but what do the kids do in that? Well, first there's the whole battle in Neilbolt Street, which is awesome. And kind of gross too at times. Not just gory gross, but there's one point where Pennywise confronts Eddie and is slobbering in his face, and Eddie's arm is broken. And it's so funny because every time they talk about it behind the scenes, like, the actor who plays him, Bill Skarsgård's like, oh my god, are you, or like, are you okay? You're cool, right? And the kid this is one of the things which I will talk about in a minute, that the show does really, that this version does really well. The actors that play the parts, although the original actors, like the adults and the kids, were pretty good. And looking back now, I feel like I should give the actors that played the kids in the miniseries more credit, because really, watching it again, I realized that the only person who does really bad, because he's probably really young and inexperienced, is the kid who played Georgie in the miniseries. The movie that Georgie's character plays is Georgie's actor does a really amazing job too, compared to all the 12-year-old kids. But they find him in Newbolt Street, and and Beverly hits him with stabs when he grabs Eddie and slobbers in his face, and the actor and Bill's like, after filming, after they cut, he's like, "Are you okay, kid?" And the kid who plays Eddie is like, "Oh my god, that was so awesome! That was so cool! I love what you did." It's so funny to hear that how the kids are all, like, the kid actors, like, they had so much fun with it. They play scared really well. And I think and it's also really sweet that Bill Skarsgård is like, after he'll do his takes where he harasses all the kids and stuff, he's like, he is always like, "Are you guys okay? Are you cool?" and stuff to the kid actors. And I think it's kind of adorable. It's really sweet. It's so funny how he's such a sweet actor, but he plays an asshole really well. Like, the first time, and I didn't realize the first time when I actually saw him was in Hemlock Grove, which is a great series. I just haven't come back to it lately. But he seems like such a sweet guy. And he looks like his brother. He really does look like his older brother, who is, the same kind of plays, Eric in True Blood. I can't think of his name at the moment. Stellan's the dad. I can't remember his name, but anyway, so that is really, really funny that he's like, "Are you guys okay?" After they cut. He gets so he wants to make sure. It shows that he's a good guy. And he's not arrogant and doesn't take himself that seriously. But, there's that whole fight, which was awesome, and there's so much that happens in the whole Newbolt Street scene, the house on Newbolt Street. That is such an awesome moment. And then at first, and then of course that is a complete disaster though. And what they do extra is that the kids all, like, have a falling out temporarily and go their separate ways because they're absolutely terrified of fighting this monster. They realize they can't do it because it's just, Pennywise is so powerful and scary, and you can't blame all the others for feeling that way. But then at the same time, you can't blame Bill for his reaction. But then it's Beverly getting captured that brings them back together. And then on top of that, they end up going back because Beverly gets captured, and there's this whole battle in the sewer. They confront Pennywise, and it still includes Henry Bowers showing up and grabbing one of them, but he grabs Mike instead. And it focuses a lot more on the racism that Mike experiences, because the original story is in 1950s when they're kids, and then goes to the 80s when they're adults. But the movie upped the setting time period, but it's still during a time when there's racism and bigotry in the world. And unfortunately, it still exists today. Things have changed and evolved, and we've started to realize the stupidness to judge someone just because of their sexuality or their skin color. But it's still, unfortunately, it's still prominent in this world today. But he grabs Mike and harasses, and it's in the 80s when they're kids. He grabs him, and Mike has to defend himself, and Henry is thrown down to the sewer, and apparently he survived that, though, which is amazing. I remember Grace from Beyond the Trailer was saying how she cannot believe that he survived that fall. but he does. I mean, he has to because in the book he comes back, and I don't think they're gonna change that much. Especially since he plays a minion. He's essentially like a minion of Pennywise. And but Mike is able to escape him and push him down the drain. And like I said, you gotta wonder how he survived that, but he did. And he gets arrested for the things that he killed his father, because Pennywise manipulates him into killing his father, and he gets arrested for that. And then he's basically portrayed as crazy. And so they escape they reach the sewers, they reach Pennywise, and I don't know, I'm so tired I am, I can't think of what exactly happens, I just remember it being so much better. What is that scene? What happens? Oh, right, Beverly gets captured, and Pennywise, that's right, okay, so Beverly gets captured, and Pennywise forces her into the deadlights, and she is hanging there, and Bill sees her and is like, I'm coming back for you, because he has to go. He wants to get revenge for his brother, and he's hoping he'll find his brother. And so he takes off running, and the others show up. And it's Ben who saves Beverly with a kiss of true love. Which that is really cute. I love that they included that. Especially because, they have this whole reference of the idea of this being like a fairy tale, and Pennywise being the fairy tale monster. Like, they're rescuing the princess. Like she's like Beverly's the beautiful princess that they must save, and then Bill and Ben are like her white knights, and he saves her, and he gives her that kiss, and it wakes her up, and then of course she realizes, oh my god, you're the one who sent me the poem. But then when they leave Derry, they forget everything. So she doesn't, when they come back as an adult, she doesn't remember that it's Bill who sent her the poem, that it's Ben who sent her the poem. And there is, so he saves her, and then there's this whole battle with Pennywise, and he eventually is able to capture Bill. Instead of Stan, he captures Bill, and he's like, if you guys leave here and leave him here, then I'll let you go and live happy, merry lives, and you don't have to worry about me ever again. And, Bill being the noble person that he is, the honorable, noble person that he's like, guys, go, leave me here, I'll be fine, just go, you deserve to be happy. And especially after they left the first time, I think he's like, doesn't want to hold them back. He's the one to force them to stay and help him. So he sends them away, but then Richie, gives this awesome speech about how he's like, yeah, you put us through all this crap. We've been scared of her, and he uses the F word and all that, and shit and all that, and he's like, but you know what? You are our friend, and we're just gonna have to kill this clown. And they beat the crap out of Pennywise, and that's basically simplifying it, but yeah, they defeat Pennywise. But then, of course, we know that Pennywise comes back. And there's this whole battle again with Pennywise. They end up in the sewer again, in the house at New Bolt Street, and Pennywise tries to separate the group and scare them with their fears. Like, Beverly is bathed in a toilet seat, a bathroom stall with blood, and all the people, like Greta, her father, the pharmacist, all those people have harassed her whole life. Pennywise takes their form and harasses her, like talking to her through the bathroom stalls, to haunting her and stuff. And they have Ben, who's afraid he's going to be buried alive and left all alone. You have Bill must confront the fact that he blamed himself for his brother's death, and it's not his fault, and he has to admit that. He has to admit to himself, it's okay that he said he lied and didn't want to play with his brother. Although there are people like, I think Grace had said she doesn't see, it wasn't necessary to include that, and I can see your point. I mean, I personally don't care that they included that. It's great that they did, and I can see why, maybe it wasn't necessary to include that part. And, let's see what else. Eddie and Richie are going through the house and all these different, like, it's an obstacle course, and like they reintroduce the whole doors, scary, not scary, scary, the scariest, all that whole concept, which it's kind of almost funny in a way, that part of it anyway. And it's like a big fun house. It's like a fun house for Pennywise, and it's just so scary, and there's so much more involved, and then eventually they all make it back. They all survive, and then they all realize that they have to lure Pennywise, and they need to make Pennywise feel small. So they're like taunting him, and and then they have the whole scene with Eddie being like, I'm gonna stop this guy, and I'm gonna defeat him, and he ends up to protect his friends, and because he almost let Richie get killed because he was so terrified, and he uses the poker that Beverly had to, she's like, it kills monsters, so he used it and stabs Pennywise and thinks, oh my god, Richie, I defeated him, and then Pennywise, of course, is a half spider, half human, and so he has his legs, and he stabs Richie. Or not Richie, stabs Eddie and kills him. So it was basically, long story short, it's so much better and so much more involved. I mean, some people might find that they prefer the simpler version of the miniseries, but I kind of like this version. So as you can tell, I'm kind of, like I said, basically telling you guys I lean more towards the movies. We also learn more about the history of Pennywise, that we learn about that Pennywise is essentially an alien come down from Earth. And we learn its history. And we do get a little bit of that he has to come back every 27 years. And one of the biggest things that I think is really good that they included, because of the time that we're in, I think is very important, is, first of all, they made Richie gay, which I think is very important with the way society is today. The important that they included it. And then on top of that, they also included, because they made Richie gay, they were able to link it to the first part in the prologue that happens in the very beginning of the book, with this young man named Adrian Mellon. He's with his boyfriend at the fair, and these punks who are they are pissed that Adrian and his boyfriend make it out in public and that they're together and stuff. They're like uncomfortable with it. It's like the horror of two men kissing. It's like it challenges their masculinity or something. And they basically beat up. There's this whole, butting heads between Adrian and these guys, and then they end up cornering Adrian and basically grabbing him, beating the crap out of him, and then tossing him in the river and allowing him to be eaten by... Sorry, every time my dogs start carrying on like that, I think, oh, maybe my dad's home. Car from the driveway. So they, and they give them to Pennywise. And it's basically gives more into the idea that Pennywise feeds off the hate in this town. Hate causes fear in this town. That's how it's able to feed on their fears, the hate. Hate leads to fear of something you don't understand, and there's a lot of racism issues too. Which they don't include as much, but I think that's because the whole gay, sexual, LGBTQ is the big thing right now, is the most, it's like more prevalent than the racism. The racism issue is prevalent, of course. It definitely is important, but the whole gay thing is a lot more talked about nowadays. It's a bigger deal today. So I think that's why, and it starts the book. It is what starts the book. Is this whole thing with this kid named Adrian Mellon, or this man being attacked. I don't know if he was a kid or not, because I remember him being a lot older when I first read the book. But maybe it's actually because he was like a teen, late teens or 20s or something. But the dogs are barking. Neither of my parents are in the driveway. I don't know why the dogs are carrying on like that. But or maybe I don't know. Sorry, the dogs are barking, so it's a distraction. So that's one of the things that they include. And then with that, they also include, there's a scene in the book that I'm really so glad they really included. I mean, ever since I heard that this new movie was coming out, I was hoping they would include this scene, because I know the miniseries from 1990 probably could not include the scene because we didn't have the technology to do it without it looking ridiculous or something. But in the book, I think it's Bill and Richie who get harassed by, there's a giant Paul Bunyan statue in the town that Bill and Richie, I think, get chased down by. The statue comes alive. So they were able to actually include that in the movie. And it's so great because it's like, I don't know why, I just love that moment. I'm so glad they were able to include that because I remember that part, which I guess it's because it's kind of scary, the idea of a giant statue coming alive and stomping after you and attacking you, you know. And maybe it's partly because I had this irrational fear. Since I was a kid, I always had this irrational fear of the south of the border. It's a truck stop between North Carolina and South Carolina. There's a giant sombrero restaurant, and at night it's lit up. And then there's all these gas station little stores and souvenir shops and stuff like that. And at the top where the sombrero hat is, it's a restaurant. It's kind of set up. It's kind of like the Eiffel Tower, set up like that. And I don't know why I've always had this rational fear. Like, it's a very intimidating presence, even though it's just a giant statue of a hat. And because my parents thought, and my sister thought it was ridiculous that I had this fear, so they would tease me about it all the time, and I always pretended I was asleep so I wouldn't have to look at it. I can't really explain it. And, like, looking at it now, years later, is much older, because it took me a long time before I got over that fear. It's like, I feel kind of embarrassed. But maybe that's part of why I have this, like, the idea of a statue coming alive is kind of scary to think about. But I love that they included that. And I bring it up because it kind of goes with Richie's whole insecurities and feeling like he doesn't want to tell the world that he's gay because he's worried how the world would react to his sexuality. And Paul Bunyan is a man's man. He's macho. He's strong, and he can cut down trees and chop down trees, and he's a man with muscle and everything. So it's a perfect figure of a real man. It's like a figure that would be it's like judging Richie for being gay, and the clown is like, Pennywise shows him, is like, I know your dirty little secret. And they were able to include that. They did not include that in the miniseries. In fact, there is implication that Eddie might be gay in the miniseries, I think. My first thought when I heard that was rolling my eyes and be like, no, he's not. They did not make him gay. Just because he's a mama's boy and he's a virgin and all that does not mean he's gay. But looking back when I was watching, I was like, okay, yeah, I kind of see where the implication goes. Where the implication came from that he might be gay. That maybe they were trying to portray Eddie that way. But I don't think he was. I don't think he was meant to be. But, and Stephen King, of course, people will say, oh, well, Stephen King will say whatever he wants. But Stephen King, I'm pretty sure, is a very liberal man. So I don't think he would have any trouble including that kind of stuff. But I don't think he ever meant to include that. Come on, the book starts with the character being harassed for being gay. So I don't think he would have a problem including that. But, the whole thing with the Paul Bunyan statue is like, like I said, it kind of goes with that, with Richie's fear of his sexuality being revealed and people reacting negatively like that. Now let's talk about the actors. So the actors were great in the miniseries, and there is only one actor in the whole movie one character in both movies that I cannot decide which actor I like better, because both actors did different portrayals of the character that I liked. So it's hard to compare the two and be like, I prefer this one over the other. There are times I kind of lean more towards the newer version, but I still but that older version is really great. And I, looking back, it's like, I can't really, it's just different. But, of course, naturally, the adult actors did an amazing job in the miniseries, because, they're professionals. But the kids, I feel like they're not as good, but but like I said, when I watched it watched it recently, I was like, well, I should give them more credit because they're actually pretty good. It's kind of hard to do something like this, especially since it's set in the 1950s, and I feel like it's hard to do the 1950s realistically without it seeming over the top, especially for kids. Now, I could be wrong there, and I could be being unfair. And like I said, I feel like the kid who played Georgie, the actor who played Georgie, was just not. He was the worst one. But they're also. But before anyone is like, but they're just kids. Here's the funny thing, though. Even though they're just kids, the kids in the movie did amazing. You forgot that they were just kids. They did such an amazing job. A lot of kid actors today, like the two actors who were teenagers, and started out very young in the show, in Gotham. The show Gotham did an amazing job too. I mean, I forget that they're adult, that they're still very young. They're younger than me. But I feel like the actors like Finn Wolfhard did an amazing job, and we got such amazing performances. And I think that's why the movie was able to focus so much more on all the characters. Like, I feel like the miniseries focused a lot on Bill and a little bit on Beverly and Ben. I feel like the movie focused on all of them, and all of them, they got more story for all the characters. Like, one of my favorite things about the movie is that, like, Bill and Eddie are made to be friends in the miniseries, but the movie did so much more with it. It was Richie and Eddie and Stan that have this close bond. They love each other like brothers. And Richie it's so hard on Richie in the movie because of what happens. And so, which leads me to the thing that the movie does better than the miniseries, at least for me. I have such a more emotional pull in the movie. I mean, in fact, I actually cry. I didn't cry in the miniseries. I mean, like, when Eddie dies in the miniseries, I was like, oh, that's so sad, but I actually cry when Eddie dies. I mean, I'm not sobbing or anything because but there's definitely tears. And you see how heartbroken Richie is. I mean, because they focus more on that relationship, that bond. It just breaks my heart that he loses both Stan and Eddie, his closest friends, the people who will probably accept him no matter what. Even if he was revealed to be gay, they wouldn't care. They're like, you're still my friend. You're still like my brother. And it's just so heartbreaking. And which actually is why I love what they did for Richie in the miniseries. Like, there's the whole gay thing in the movie, not the miniseries. The whole that they made Richie gay, and maybe it's because the actors who play Richie were perfect for the role. Like, Finn Wolfhard and Bill Hader. It was such a perfect match for Richie, or the actors did such an amazing job at portraying this character. And then the other character I love best was Eddie. They did such a good job with Eddie's character too. Like, he was a bit of a soft boy in the miniseries, and I like Eddie's those two actors' version of Eddie. He was great. It was good. And who knows? Maybe he was a lot closer to the book. Like I said, it's been a while since I've read the book all the way through, but I kind of prefer the whole thing about Eddie being just very neurotic, but he's a lot stronger of a character. Like, he's more vulnerable in the miniseries, but in this one, he's so much stronger and more confident. I mean, he still can't face his mother, but he still can't deal with her, but he's also a little more assertive and not as much of a soft boy as he is in the miniseries. I mean, he's and he's a little more neurotic and crazy. And I like his little obsession, OCD, like obsession with germs and stuff. He's more, the whole germophobic thing is more included in the movie. But he's like, it's so funny, his constantly pointing out all the germs you can get from going in the dirty water and stuff like that. It's very funny and adorable. And it's very, and like there's one of my favorite lines that probably is most people's favorite lines is Gazebo's line, but like when he finds out from Greta that her dad's pills are actually the pills that her dad gives Eddie are placebos, they're not legit. And so he's like, finally he realized when he gets a call from his friends to help Beverly to save her and stuff, he's like, his mom is trying to stop him and like, you're sick and you can't go out. And he's like, you kept me from my friends and you're not my friend, and the whole Gazebo's line is hilarious. And those two are my favorites, I think, with Beverly too. I like Little Ben, but the actor Jay Ryan, I think, or Jake Ryan, I think he's the one that plays older, which is good and all, but it's not, wow, I kind of agree with other people that he's not the best. But we still got, it was still, still such a great, amazing performance. But yeah, I love and then the last thing I want to talk about is something that I cannot decide which one I like better because they both do different performances, and that is Pennywise and the performance between Tim Curry and Bill Skarsgård. They both go at it very different approaches. Like Tim Curry goes for a more comedic, dark comedy approach because that's one of the things he's really good at. That's like a villain that's kind of comedic at the same time, but not in a silly, over-the-top kind of way. So he, of course, I'm sure he can do that too. But he's like very snarky and stuff, and makes sarcasm and makes jokes all the time. Like there's a whole library scene when Richie goes in the library to wait, and he's taunting him and making those stupid little knock-knock jokes, and the whole, is your refrigerator ready? You better go catch it, and all those kind of silly little jokes, and trying to annoy him because he knows that Richie's the only one who can see him, so he knows that Richie will react, and Richie's trying so hard to ignore him, and the whole balloons and stuff, and all the balloons popping, and everybody being sprayed by blood, but they can't see it. And he makes a snarky comment when he finds Bill at the graveyard putting graves on his brother's flowers on his brother's grave, and like going to see him and stuff. And Pennywise is sitting there taunting him, and he's like, I have all these graves for you guys, and oh, you can't take that one, sorry, it's already taken. And of course we all know that before they know that Stan is in that grave, and he does not realize that. Now, and then there's also, but then now Bill's performance is more, and also Tim Curry also portrays it like with the book, how it does in the book, where he doesn't want them to come out and he tries to scare them away and taunt them and be like wanting to make them want to leave by taunting them with their old fears, but in a more adult way. While Bill's performance, he is more like a monster child that has godlike powers. That's how I would describe. He's like he's like a child, but he's a monster. And he actually wants them to come back because he wants revenge on them because they defeated him once and seriously wounded him. So he wants them to come back. So he taunts them to come back. He persuades them to come back, and he wants to kill them and feed off of their fears, and he takes such pleasure in it. And constantly taunts them all the time, and he's like a big kid. And he does that, so it's just very, and he reminds them of all their old fears and stuff from their games, but doing it in a different way, because he knows that he can't scare them the way he did before. It's very, so it's hard to really decide because they do very different approaches. I mean, there are some times where I do lean more towards Bill Skarsgård, but then I'm reminded of Tim Curry's performance, and I feel like I can't dismiss that performance. That performance is just as good, if not better. You know, I mean, I think I still kind of lean more towards Bill's performance, but it's kind of close. And there's one more thing, emotional wise, that why this has such a strong emotional pull on me. I am a sister, for one. I am a little sister. And my sister has 2 boys. And I think that those 2 things are a contributing factor. But I think it also includes the acting itself, the actors themselves. Because, I mean, they still have this aspect of it in the miniseries. But it makes me cry more when I watch it. And that is the whole Georgie and Bill relationship, especially when Georgie's dead. And there's this whole scene in the climax of the first movie where Pennywise takes the form of Georgie and is like, Bill, I want to go home. I'm so sorry I lost the bone and everything. And it's just so, everybody in Bill's telling me, we all miss you, Georgie, but you can't come. It's just he wants to go home so badly. It is just so sad and heartbreaking. And I actually cried because, just that performance of those 2 boys. They do such an amazing job, and really just of Jaden, and I don't know who plays little Georgie's, and the name of the actor who plays Georgie, but it just made me cry so much. It got so heartbreaking. Like I said, I think, there's contributing factors of not just the actors, but also the fact that I have 2 nephews. It's just so heartbreaking to watch, and it makes me cry. And then Bill knows it's not really Georgie, so he's forced to be like, "You're not Georgie," and he shoots him. And it's just, and then of course Pennywise just ruins the moment. Thanks a lot, by the way, for ruining the moment. And but that whole scene just breaks my heart. Seeing Georgie and saying, "I want to go home, Bill." And then Bill, realizes that he can't because his brother is dead. And it's not really Georgie he's seeing, it's Pennywise taking the form of Georgie. And it's such a beautiful scene, and it makes me tear up so much. And you don't get that in the miniseries. I mean, you get a little bit of a scene, because you see the ghost of Georgie, Pennywise taking that form, and he's like, So it's similar, but it's not as powerful. It doesn't have the same emotional pull. And it's so heartbreaking, but so beautiful at the same time. And, so obviously what it comes down to in the end is I kind of like the movie, but I will always hold the classic in my heart. The classic original miniseries, because it was still very good. But there are things that the new movie does better. And I know not everybody will agree. But for me personally, that version of the story I like better. Now, like I said, I would love to do a video where I compare them to the book and say who does it better, who portrays the story better, which film adaptation, but who knows if that will ever happen. Maybe someday. What I need to do is try to set a goal for myself, but it's very hard. I mean, I would love to do like a bunny read of it or something, or get someone else. And I love my friends, but they're not going to do it. 2 of them were not going to be willing to read that book because it's so long. And then the other one, I mean, maybe she would, but I don't know. I don't think she ever will read it. I mean, and I don't blame her. That's a chunk of a book. That's a tome. That's more than that's a mammoth. And it is easier to go just watch the on-screen adaptations. But yeah, it's good. So that is my comparison of the 2 movies. Like I said, clearly I kind of lean more towards one over the other, but they're still great. I still recommend them. And I hope you guys enjoyed this comparison, and give a thumbs up if you like this video, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already liked this video, and click the bell notification below to see if you want to see when I post new videos. As always, I hope you are enjoying your reading, and I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye!